Does everyone have it?
We're good.
Five measures. Cool. Advantage when it's warming, siege emissions will peak now. If I said it, the 23 siege will be 25, but with half the world past peak, and China started to decline as a global space, siege made a growing movement down. Just a faster transition underway, 50 countries peak, we will soon cross the global dip where emissions peak and decline, not all peaking to do. Downstream real progress is made. That limits the worst effect of carbon-induced warming, but methane continues to warming the planet. Urban 25 determined emissions will slide downward on the other side. Every time a durable impact, we confident we follow the curve. Still, the world will get warmer. The all rising temps of the world needs to be addressed. The downward turn rates between limited time and turn towards zero fossil human. Carbon peak this year, emissions, the methane keep rising. Every molecule of methane abatement is key. Otherwise, emissions will typically want to kick in and go to the planet is equal. 22 the limit thought is likely to come methane fast. Every committed causes irreversible harm to be pointed or had to quantify and include models about the viability will pass the thresholds in years. This increasing every day. The super momentum, the biggest opportunity to slow warming is coming methane single most impactful way to slow warming due to slash rate by half. Dams are the largest source of methane emissions. Height in 22 in the cities underestimated emissions focused on direct emissions from surface. One source of organic materials by dams and others fertilizer on up to the composition of the carrots methane dams. What's the contribution to climate change on the surface account for 459 teragrams of CO2 emission nickel per year. They can be run up. US and the whole energy in the cities that result in less emissions useful to methods over relaxational variation of it. Less of it can rest of a level of smaller vegetation, curve vegetation, increase conversion results. Emissions of open up dams is far greater due to the millions of acres of forest assets. The soil caused by dams. Tackling emissions in the U.S. spills out globally. Walker in 23 dams of resources have been handled the methane equivalent to coal and warm. This not just called these methanes. The factory CPs are finding methods in County methane from dams because the U.S. helps that climate policy across the planet and helps fund projects with the World Bank. IMF, as another instructions having U.S. lead methane and will facilitate better decision making future dam projects everywhere. Every source matters because of its heating severity, reducing emissions solves that's key. 21 the dams will release greater methane worse than carbon dioxide has much stronger impact on climate holes. Not IR is 4 times more effective in warming the atmosphere. You think we do reduce methane harming these will help with this opportunity to manage resources better reduce GHG's extinction on Heim 24 commentaries it's been upgraded to because of the effects of severe cascading event. The effects are poorly understood commentaries to trigger the other reservoir more disease spread migration could exacerbate to address the classified water food insecurity on the good appropriate amount of ability to recover the world goes beyond carbon encompasses the acidification and depletion expert the related tensions because they lack historical occurrences but many and myopic focus on factors leading up to the calamity. Advantage 2 is power. Electricity will explode now. Walton 24 data centers manufacturing electrification drive rapid growth and demand for electricity part of the U.S. ensure the resource adequacy operators expect annual growth of 6% takes advantage of the full range of tech to meet demand including hydropower the gas powered 40% of electricity with new plants versus lock in and restricted assets to fossil fuels result in higher cost and low reliability. Coal and gas are traded globally resulting in price fluctuations and inevitable spikes overhauls. 22 let's talk as we need to depend on coal and gas will go when price fluctuations and bills go up and the higher price both prices to cost jump by 70% our grid runs on gas if we burn more over the summer the cover peak electricity that contributes to higher prices of 6% is going to get fossil fuels. Absent a transition from fossil energy power ramp up causes irreparable turbine damage and blackouts by junkin. 21 any of it gas wiped out to gas and result in severe stress of the grid impact ability to recover no extreme events hydropower required to provide response to hydropower essential to withstand asset outage and for gas plants and during large frequency and range of hydropower generator some that generate not pricing over significantly wider frequency range much less sensitive for hydro turbines are located that a slower speed gas are very sensitive and permanent damage. Cheap and consistent electricity is critical to outpace Chinese tech development. Loyola 24 AI hails Norwegian tech notice only for making keeps electricity prices without power requirements of air recycling rising prices ability of companies with China times industry catch temperature capacity capacity US by 2030 America's been at the forefront of innovation major reason has been abundant energy to an end loss of tech leadership goes nuclear the bargaining model of Kronig 21 enhanced power result of gradient by shutdown the third the tech of the US would reinforce ability to dominance count terrorism the main Moscow invasion would use new contract to strengthen the bishop political aims of Moscow developed new tech would invade Europe China acquired a new tech to invade Taiwan or the SCS marketing model maintains the perfect info result in common new tech exacerbate uncertainty cause the rapid shifts once the US or China or Russia or China fight war there would be received nuclear escalation only hydropower solves it can be stockpiled dispatched and insulated from supply shocks. Newell 21 hydro is very reliable generation stable but more than the weighted solar hydro is attachable hydro improved reliability and contributes to resiliency design experience of disruption areas based on fossil generation able to procure the fuel plays a major role in the Texas the polar vortex the water are not considered system planning. It's the fastest resource to smooth and mitigate blackout risk. Roll 21 VRA expected doing good on the best various the environment ensure secure integration of VRA lows will be more volatile gas between peak and minimum the main will be larger and so the governments will be steeper hydropower the 1100 day balance they provide black start hydropower is most flexible power so about 2 minutes of coal requires hours to be operational hydropower well suited supply stable power new flat or shorter and early development cost is high retrofitting non-power dams is key to diversify supply. Iominco 20 much all 100% safety risk they should be removed however happened to the potential dams that remain essential infrastructure hydropower play a crucial role in the industry that can operate 24/7 purple. Very quickly, red and grids with the staff calculates voted during peak demand and black cats names are there for essential purposes, almost run by the core of engineer, not capture. That energy, federal dams are key. Harrison, 23 Congress, authors the core to operate federal dams, hydropowers, reliable, special parts, electricity on the clock through every season, federal hydro, comes in for variable wind, preserves the reliability of hydro, and serve economic advantage, the economic depend on reliable electricity, federal hydro remains the cornerstone of clean energy. Advantage 3 is damage. Dams are prime for inevitable cascading failure, resulting destroying critical infrastructure. Law 20 the US is a particularly concerned law inventory. AG dam has a high hazard of failure, road bridges, roads, the rail power water hospital, water wastewater hospital, in number of being flooded. One dam failed, the dam failures have occurred, and have been notable close call, reflecting adequate maintenance. Dams critically near failure, even under normal operations, very small. The pressure may be trigger process. The process of the street for local trigger cascading failure of dams due to sedimentation and age, vulnerability of critical infrastructure population centers, toxic, waste sites, flooding, extinction, Dinkelberger, 21. Civilization requires an independent critical, inverted by food, water, food, what's in supply chains, capable of resisting small stress, smaller, demand, precipitated cascading field of CI, capable of curtailing civilization such as extinction, reducing prevalence of races, leave valuable clumps of industry, reduce capacity to short tag, the project to bring action to risks. A rock's muzzle dam is deteriorating, collapse destroys anti-ISIS operations in the region of Falkenstein, the 16 muzzle dam, the most interest of the world, pumped full of town, the ground, the situation going on, urgent on the rendering, the structure unstable, the breach lead to a wave of 80 feet, and Baghdad would have a water all over clumps, would inhibit the Iraqi military, would impede the ability of national forces to base stretch, resources in place, some of the inhibiting operations against ISIS maintaining, the dam is crucial, extinction tours, the 21 major tech notably is in biostable, is hybriding able unprecedented power in the hands of terrorists, meaning the next step, not only could we claim far more ISIS, which is fast even more, in the apocalyptic ideology, defense cycle weapons in the playground, the accessibility of dual use tech is one of the reasons the threat of extinction is high on the cusp of the empowerment of extreme individuals does not bode well. The plan is key to set a model for dam regulation globally owned, 15 dam, build overseas across Asia, and full national dams, a high importance of the US important about underground development is inevitable, there's landing programs that reduce the impacts of dams build, trading could be one mechanism, and there's specific imitation, the US pioneering and experiments with trading influence regulatory approaches around the world dams, could be next, thus the plan, the United States federal government should inaugurate an energy policy for decarbonization in the United States, including a cap and trade system for non-hydropower dam emissions, restructure hydropower licensing. Ethan's in the plan is condition for is solvency. The plan caps dam emissions, intensifies and owes to determine if their giant dams are junk or can be innovated. Walsh 22.1 disincentive wait for a carbon pricing for branding until it develops a method to mitigate emissions that take a form of target trading. The system cap and trade provides a factor rating to withstand while incentivize the low emissions and will sell allowances. Although hydro facility offset emissions of failure domain, and then the cap guarantees a guarantee of sanctions. New tech could result in a generation of emissions to have hydropower reduce methane energy producers so follow. The money guard incentives with the likely go a long way resolving emissions hydropower. The remain vital in the transition of potential makes it enticing. It is time we determine which we can live with, which we can live without a check and balance. That's necessary to reduce methane emissions from dams. Owners can offset the cap by adding fossil displacing hydropower to dams. Spurring hydropower expansion. Brown 24 hydropower is crucial on the advantage ability to increase capacity with the additional dams. This will depend on regulatory framework. The parts of the fact that interstate commerce are required to be licensed as the license subjects in any system to FERC authority. This is true. Even if the system is not transmitted across borders, some of the FERC has initiated dual licensing. The way that time frames are too long, the same investment restructuring will aid with hydro encourage incentives like dam trading, also trading dam removals, hydropower of the FERC. Go to separate environmental regulatory existing dams, which would not mean we could be subject to be replaced with hydrokinetics and obstacle matters. The themes are federally owned incentive on off-this many could benefit to encourage dams further. Promote hydrokinetics. Ethan might have a lot of time. The cap forces compliance by allowing owners to remove or retrofit the dams owned. The 15 there are 87,359 dams in U.S. hydropower is according to cost per hour can be low price manager flex, but 97% of dams do not produce power. Some of the dams or less valuable than one, and not some not all dams become obsolete. Just by that, many could upgrade to modern purposes or dams trading off. Public complexity to federal dams and Congress authorize a dam, and then congressional action be necessary to authorize removal only where some dams produce more social harm than others. There will be incentive to trade no federal law creates cap on environmental impacts of dams. For federal dams, may incentive sources well more powerful, no regulatory licensing exists once Congress authorized prescription. It is will able to remain measure trades using curves of CO2E. And then scientists and engineers and service away the possible years ago using geoinfo modeling vendors beyond the maps that identify candidates for we will studies root beyond significant less around the entire basin to 20 instead of getting dams mitigation. By traders are third-party regulators use basin modeling to define the rules of credits to create a certainty for traders at lower cost. Is that operation trading not only help regulators define currencies for trading, but go back to power. Go back to power. Blackouts only executional power cannot be quickly restored. Monarch 20-way power cannot be restored in time. Remember the president's extra black side. These are strong original operation. The question is not how, but whether we can survive on the grid. This interconnected fairly well on the food scarcity plains around the water. Become electric. I'm the last one going to chaos. Red. Diseases re-emerged. U.S.
Actually, go back, read the card. There's a top of the file. That.
Grid air double Michokin, 21 during, cold demand for grass, and they seed on the capacity of highlands in order to stop down the course and cold interrupted to delivery sluggish. The flow malfunctions on the heat stream heat directly ready to collapse on the earthquake damage failures, life failures on level, can catch on the lead Wi-Fi loss of electricity, sea levels, the threat assets too strong, third Wi-Fi, impact transmission on the geomagnetic disturbance lead to voltage collapse and failure, transformers wildlife resulting in outages on the copper bugs lead, the lesser components. Jane?
Yep.
U.S. leadership propagates norms that solve extinction emerging tech chain. 19 of the U.S. industry reporters were the most important entrepreneurs of operating good governance rules. It's besieged on the democratic course necessary. The major differences are the challenges has grown on the U.S. and its allies had still have the power to influence necessary to shape outcomes. They may introduce into military autonomous election engaged with targets and kill the robots to reduce risk and duty. There are not their creators and threat in existence. Committee needs norms. Agreements mitigate where downside will maximizing. Upside. No neg fiat, too many possible options, makes it impossible to use it. Conditionalities back, has a stress, queue, and argumentative irresponsibility, dispo solves, gives the afterlight in the game.
That makes sense.
Yep, the plan was done.
Yes. Okay, those cards are sent.
Good.
Yep.
The third advantage, this Mosul Dam deteriorating card, the U.S. has beaten ISIS in the region. Explain relevance.
Well, ISIS is resurging, and we think that a collapse of Iraq
Right,
would cause ISIS to resurge.
Resurging where?
The Mosul Dam evidence says that a cascading collapse of the Mosul Dam would result in a flooding of all operations in
This
the Middle
card
East.
is about like exacerbating climate conditions that are like causing floods, etc. Now it's been 8 years. Like identify why. What the
Well,
plan
like
is to-
obviously the dam hasn't like collapsed yet, but it could in the future because
Okay,
the
I
same
guess-
issues still
Are there
exist.
any other states that would model the regulations?
We have just set up Iraq, but
Just
we
Iraq.
think that it would probably be modeled globally. Our
Okay,
ONN apps
I
evidence
guess-
is generalized to that.
What does the plan do to incentivize this like hydro whatever energy? Like what about trading encourages?
Yeah, so we set a cap on the amount of CO2 equivalent emissions that can come from dams, and you can get credits by either decommissioning a dam that is old, retrofitting your dam to be environmentally friendly, which is things like hydropower, or offsetting the emissions by also retrofitting with hydropower.
Okay, and then what about that causes the shift to the new hydrokinetic projects?
Well, I mean, you can get credits to continue to emit if you offset with hydropower. That's the argument.
So they have to create the innovations to get the offsets.
Yes.
Okay, I guess would the cap gradually go down? Like what does that look like?
It would decline over time, but probably not to zero.
Okay, I guess is if the dams in the status quo are like already leaking now, would they just be shut down, or like what does retrofitting mean? In that
Well,
context?
retrofitting means that you can either make it environmentally friendly by like capping it, solving the issues that cause methane emissions. You can decommission it, so you can literally just get rid of the dam, or you can retrofit it with hydropower to offset the emissions of methane
Okay,
caused
but-
by the dams.
But hydropower, like, if in a world in which they choose that route, the the dams just continue emitting methane.
Yes, the argument is that hydropower would offset emissions in other forms. We also think that most dams would end up being decommissioned.
Okay,
Is the
I guess
argument, so that
the-
probably resolves most.
What about hydropower spills over to solve like grid and power outages in that context?
Yeah, we've read like 7 hydropower very, very good cards that I implore you to read. The evidence
well, yeah,
says
is
things like,
hydropower good,
the
but
reason
does it
why-
say that would resolve blackouts.
yeah, the argument is that hydropower can quickly start up and is not susceptible to turbine failures. One of the examples our evidence gives is that it can start up in 2 to 20 minutes compared to coal, fossil fuel,
I guess
oil
like,
plants
where
that
have you
take
read
hours.
evidence that like for example, how would you overcome the Texas grid collapse that like happened a couple of years? Well, not like collapse.
I
but
think we
that
have a
outage,
we
like-
have a card that literally says that if we integrated hydropower, we'd be able to start up quickly to offset
But
things
you
like the
haven't read-
Texas
you haven't
power
read a
grid.
piece of evidence
collapse.
that individuals and firms would want to integrate renewables.
Well, yes, the solvency cards, the first card, is descriptive of what the results of carbon pricing and cap and trade would look like. It says that there would be an incentive for them to do so because they would otherwise be harmed.
Okay, the one I see is 9 off, and then the 3 advantages.
Do you need the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the 3 advantages in the order of that one I see. So warming power.
I got it. You got it.
Yep. Kansas is good. Is everyone on the panel good? Yeah.
First off, T subsets the carbonization requires all sectors. The plan is solely dams. Bushel 19 to carbon requires substitution of foods regardless of the each has been associated with voter limited right and the subsets correct the net research burden 2. Then integrate the topic into a vicious cycle of tidy ass and backfile garbage. T energy policy. It is energy intervention, not emissions. Can duty 22 energy policy refers to all intervention, production, distribution, and consumption of all energy. Such as climate policy covers areas not approximately the energy regulation of emissions. Land use ag forest. They violate capital and dam emissions. Does not necessarily innovate in the energy sector because there are non-energy emissions that the plan regulates. Vote neg 1 limits emissions. Blow the lid off the topic that makes any externality. And have 2 ground intervention is the crux of all links. its unilateral counterpart, the United States federal government should declare for states and members of the private sector may rely on the attention of the United States to inaugurate an energy policy for decarbonization in the United States, including a cap trade system for non-hydropower dam emission infrastructure, hydropower licensing, and requirement before the International Court of Justice about the obligation created by this declaration, and enforce the declaration as obligated. It's also used without adopting a CEP. Order Mass 15 court is employed a law of treaties and judicial regions, including that of the binding commitment. Is governed by Allah, not by the law of one state. Where treaty were constituted and the agreement of treaty must impose obligation binding other law as opposed to political commitment, not like the typical treaty, unilaterally binding obligation. Express consent to be beyond through unilateral statements. It breathes life into the law of unilateral commitments that caps coordination problems in international law. Circumstances commitments of Cromwell only name a collective action NDTs demonstrating commitment made, which all comes from which Trump returned the Cromwell intention to which Trump would under the agreement everything into nothing political action, not governance law will come around when this was NDT for the law by other treaties unilateral declarations with other purposes with the ongoing commitments is reliance obligation around the unilateral action that leads to new role of U.S. non-escape application of concept extinction learner 17 all over extinction for Russian the U.S. possess sound of news GCs and Christopher trees bio nanotech particle and AI altered virus for which we have no defense alpha 7 nano consumer by by cycle chan produce black hole that virus with process limited human season 5 volcanoes 700 volcano gamma razor ET law public and communication government important role government counterpart international government institution building other fabric and self preservation for accidental solution to be achieved no level and I'm no principle sensitive for how humans are war corporate the before global resolution can ally in national interest CAFK pricing dams is undergirded by neoliberal production logic pricing dams leads to environmental destruction and indigenous displacement in 2020 the thing is economy through CVA the court assess monetary value to the irreparable damage that environmental institutionalized within the market system of neoliberal orientation on news any political consideration of the damage to the indigenous population or the environment using economic framework loss violence will be reduced in price name corporation can afford to because the rest of the certain limited some form of penalty damage not relegated to the market back they will be procedure fighting sufficient legitimacy for the construction to take place in monetary terms and challenging of construction often face except the interests of indigenous communities and interests of the prior to communities over the environment capitalism is systemically unsustainable extinction number 23 climate war nothing needed if economic system of the job for profits of the university community by the pandemic should access exchange when the least construction health and routine US has to decorate in evolution to cap extinction system of capital source that's new conflict through the rest of the space because it's the most powerful setting routine to expand industries so fast militarism produce military keynesianism states spending militarism producing biochemical and several all accidental viewed by capitalism by MBIs are ineffective in locking capitalist growth the alternative is democratic socialism that were just the inevitability of markets filter 23 transition has to do growth and likely to avoid poverty to abandon growth is going to production to plan to production economic activity socialist degrowth funded not a solid critical market instruments reliance on price and private sector ineffective market leader capacity growth and alternative capitalist market democratization of economy and substitution trying to condition prices here to collective growth equals the law of market measure a growth equals the not-going plan those research and planning close capitalist project converted by non-market institutions and national production facing a sector research is no longer left to the market the also is the case better than the plan here 23 there's reason we spread water subsidies on now electricity possibility to president remain on for socialist fight for an alternative model the must talk the equipment fight electricity alternative both infrastructure percent electricity critical electricity for social organization they put centralized like the MG tax flexible contract with independent producers traditional liberty in line with the utilities we offer for socialist electricity politics based on public and we have seated market for electricity and commodities design seeking them to achieve electricity necessitates no social independent supply most council demand for components must transfer dependent electricity use hydroelectric and solar wind power is limited with these electricity vital infrastructure we don't have traditional centralized form of low scale power generation power plants and large scale damn states kind of like the 50th for all of its national unusual inaugurated energy policy for decarbonization in the United States including a cap trade system for non-hydropower dam emission and restructure hydropower licensing politics the budget prices now there is opposition lead for one we don't want to rally behind a budget before made every little move is completely possible it will follow the likely Trump to push a plan like we're setting up titles for the fighters will be received MBIs are politically toxic for in all 20 and for the good of politicians environmental policy are done by effective green policy and media visible in contrary to political planning structural reform reduction generating and terrorist increased policy soon to see a second effect as a first recommendation for team politically toxic that's keep sibling show global 25 possible to invest 100 billion invest realize the base for stock nations extension political capacity begin restoring returns vast nations to Taiwan invasion capacity 25 million dominance distribution can conquer pushing to safety out and would make invasion of Taiwan certain time savers capacity ships savers of electric capacity China capable according to the SAS vision safe desire to bring Taiwan under control the greatest statue security that ends humanity Eastern 23 extending Taiwan peace theory cease fear of the American alliance system nuclear arms power out of control depends North Korea go nuclear North Korea and Bolton take over the peninsula as the war ceasing rappeless what the cellular government finally transform the world order cosmically unsustainable attempts to resolve the current order cause violent nationalism and military commons the world against the nation state is the root cause of contemporary crisis and ensures the still potential alternative futures but negative for social science and exceeds the nation state as a unit of analysis as Gupta making the UK facing science recovery after Brexit fans out of law all the competition space system made out national policy not come out of the West One development the waiting of nation state in voting with imports and loss of infiltration through indicate structural doubting the regular defining technology the revolution system maybe we're on a will future that movement is gone from beyond the authority of national cause objective any else to be attacked as possible good reason to be suspicious of authority many moments where politics on the expanded including creation of an instant delusion of belief that things in the government desperate to prove control of the in order to conclude on the Ukraine never said there are few consequences around Taiwan so still been insecure be revealed the US will get the concept no longer do anything core clock the future tech integration zap case laws verdict 23 reports are investing in tech tips for what human processes for innovation new filing your hearing critical tech investment make faster decision virtual points to say opportunity to disclose access to customer optimization options organization planning strategy include solutions that short temperatures for adjusting any move the plane opens a floodgate that turns against presumption of deal 13 common policy to face considerably political legal challenges that not only for supposed regulatory burdens the business has but they identify organic officer relation into the master councils of NG of 30 regulated messages series of legal challenges regarding the endangerment and Taylor movie never allowed to expect violence human lawsuits from states and ventures group docket over the friends efficient resolution water tweets that ask this topic of research harassing 19 definition of properties essential conclusion of trying to comment enforcement speed by judicial decision water rights reports in the court water case are general supposed to however case may burden dockets climate may use common better judicial decision make case reduce the copy of the perspective judicial system is it goes global extinction US judicial management is the collecting of climate change affecting global loss of oil, worsening water problems. Also, the climate many countries will actually classify the 1AC. Actually, I'll read this part. Climate change affecting global worsening water problems will be a source of many countries will ensure that risky further increase in tension and cost we're distracted from working on important objectives that multiplies the challenge for the world at large for policy to reduce waste around the world, conflict resolution, and hold problems to address problems that often include judicial actions to save us. So, our opportunities, of course, caught up in the United States federal judiciary should hold the constitutional guarantees and the environmental standing charter involved in operating the energy policy for decarbonization in the United States, including cap and trade system for non-hydropower, dam emissions, and restructure hydropower listing. It competes and solve the case. Law 21 judiciary using the provide emission remedies and loads emissions as appropriate under use of from mitigation tax reduction framework and has litigation and broader injury and vacuum and right to take form of potentially reduced emissions. That unravels the PQD lane 20 for a new PQD and now for climate ordering actually to adopt and compromise within decrease mixing with accused of 30 landscape within narrow powers this year particularly in the detective climate to which traditionally fall back to PQD PQD still play taking role litigation of PQD way heavily in the US overturning PQD prevents internal corruption by defense contractors as well 10 contractors prevents the reason PQD universally contracted about PQD shift liability PQD with major factor in trouble litigation companies to be deterred from contracts and pay to be prevent extinction Loophole 24 climate lands contractor holds weight over global climate spending which are at a high tension except by core flows into the organization in Africa influence security not as US sector of plans armed trade companies with conflict resolution, armed hills, and intervention and influence diplomacy, providence, and financial engagement regardless of consequences. Embassy and armed race, Hamdan, Israel, Mali, race, and work for peace for generation, and prioritize stability over conflict. And finish one. Warming is survival and net beneficial. Climate change, danger warming, having like 40 degrees Celsius, and we have to try very hard to achieve more like 3 degrees Celsius, very little chance of 40 degrees Celsius, going to rise down the ability 2.5 degrees Celsius to vaccine. People have time to still stable, rise very slow, 140 degrees for every minute. We can have time to the long damage will give our outlier local conjunction just by just for climate hedge cycle, quite mild adapted 77 planets. Since the rate of stream by the planet, that's negative effects over positive effects to repeat zones. Moving toward climate, each humans live all in a potential alarms to the dimension. Warming alleviates suffering, ag effect, small forms of reduction of food climate is woefully wrong for that problem. Allowing the biodiversity, habitat restoration of refugees, heat action. Do you need to press load on decompression to conserve the lower? Warming goal, nothing to be afraid of. The risk is zero. Both in the climate science is not winning. Elsewhere, Hogwarts will freeze next season and human station is not among those shades of climate. Driving us to change for low chance zero slash most of the climate science shows the world made progress become clear, but not headed towards worst case scenarios. Climate migration is a host. Last 21. Climate refugees have all taken the climate behind immigration players can place weather. With climate yields and migration planning will mean setting markets Africa, Middle East production increase dramatically. Same for the America belief immigration location. Or because some models are wrong, then history of you know critical refugees, not a single climate ever negative facts in history. Do not support claims. Finish two. The impact of loss of tech leadership 2021 civil service in Beijing overturning the order of Beijing religion of sort of government they want to just the capitalism of the assistant that makes the audience check makes a little time to accept low level pay social time that would prove limited in the future of the British and also not sustainable giving aging population corruption and government body that freedom of job innovations in the 80s not a single nation that is highly dependable a single global even this is the challenge without advantage reject the species intention China is threatening to destroy a way of life yes next fiat keto next flex on an F5 because the status quo is indefensible yes condo keto next flex says next choice has introduced a massive inches skew is inevitable from non-advocacy arguments and this will minimize next choice which is bad for the above standards. Finish 3. No great impact. Large in 18. Grids not about to go down. Grids are not demonstrated. Social capabilities after not. Super the limits action and grids with the discriminants that are going on server. Not cause right to back to require highly chose with not food not effectively scale. Generally emergency tech impacts are fake. Kudos over 20. 2. Emergency play with lack of understanding of time protection maturity of production not real effects include AI space hypersonic counter budget. Honest and economic game changing ingredients destiny place before maturity feasibility publicity. Reversing coordinates that goes to the solution will limit the coordinate process not represent system for political action media. Real revolution experts look beyond. Wonder effectiveness. No ISIS back really 19. Claims of object are overload. Isolated slash regulate any hard remain speculation subject. Subdigital subnominated ISIS able to manifest land whiskey recruiting is gone money. Let us productivity's capacity is diminished. ISIS expansion is inevitable regardless of damn clubs. If they want to use emerging tech, they would.
You good?
Yeah.
Status of everything.
Status quo is always a logical option.
Great. Court's counterplaying the AF is quote a remedy for injunctions. Does that require a suit to be brought?
Sorry?
Okay, so does the plaintiff have to bring a suit under the environmental standing doctrine in order to get the AF to happen?
A plaintiff wouldn't necessarily have to bring a suit. We would answer to like sua sponte, but our argument is that the court can just rule based on constitutional guarantees. They can use existing.
Yeah. Okay.
They can use existing
Remedy,
cases to rule on that.
Remedy is it like mimicking the cap and trade system through injunctive relief, or is it literally forcing the executive or the rest of the government?
There
to
are
adopt the
two
AF?
ways that the app solves. One is by ruling that the environmental standing doctrine compels climate policy, which reduces emissions. Second is that it results in executive or the legislative, whichever one is necessary for us.
Okay, wait.
Both to do a policy similar to the plan.
Let's talk about the first part of that. So, is that allow for climate suits independently of like the plan and the plan's emissions, or is it just
setting the precedent that the court is able to regulate environmental emissions would incentivize climate suits.
Okay. The politics is that would the budget ever end up passing? So, is it just get passed down, or do we just like?
I mean, both are likely scenarios. Like, both are probably likely from the status quo. Our evidence says that the president needs to rally political capital to get a strong
So
budget passed.
wait. I want
Either no budget passes at all, which leads to shutdown, or the provision of shipbuilding would get cut, which leads to our tax.
So I want to make this like very clear: is that like if the government shut down, like the budget would just never pass.
I mean,
ever.
eventually they would pass a budget, but
Eventually they would pass a budget. Okay. That
logically
is.
they would, but absent political capital, the shipbuilding provision wouldn't be included, which triggers our.
Where have you read evidence that says PC is key to the shipbuilding?
Our lead
provision?
evidence says that Trump influence is key. Obviously, we can read more evidence in the block, but broadly, our evidence says that shipbuilding is a controversial provision, and Trump pushing it is necessary.
Your evidence just says the House is invested in it. And why would the House not continue to want to push for that as after the shutdown?
Because of the plan. Well, because of the plan. The
What
plan's
I guess
political.
what about the plan changes the desire for shipbuilding provisions?
Well, it's not specifically about shipbuilding. It's about
Well, you said
compromise
it
over.
was.
It's about compromise over the budget. Trump needs to be able to push the budget with the full force of Congress behind his back, which he's not able to do after he spent all that stuff on the plan.
Okay, Cap K, democratic socialism. What does that entail?
What does that entail? It entails nationalization of industry, and it entails policy shifts by the government to reject the inevitability of markets in favor of central planning.
Could those policy shifts result in regulating dams?
Yes.
What types of regulations?
Like command and control regulations, for example, that mandate that dams reduce emissions to a certain amount, or just subsidizing hydroelectric power.
Okay. We'll take
All
the
those
next.
things would likely be done by socialist governments.
Thank you,
There's
Elizabeth.
evidence of that, actually.
John.
Yeah.
No, there's two.
10 minutes.
I'm gonna resave that to this. Or do you want to read out?
Save it.
I'm gonna bet it for.
Actually, I don't want to save that.
Yeah. Do you have the like
No. Depends on the courts, right? Is there other? Is there other the declaration kind can you grab details to that? That's what I'm saying. It is a version of that.
Yeah, I got you. You want to just read that one off?
Yeah, I'll do that. Let me,
But you're good. Let me make sure I get this out.
yeah.
I have that saved already.
Okay, stock prep. 228 used, so 732 left. I'm sending it out. Send.
Sorry, you're good. Thank you.
The order is the advantages in order. So warming, power, damage. T, decarbonization. T, energy policy. Yeah, of course.
Decarbonization is a sentence.
Yeah. Then T, energy policy. The court's counterplan. The declaration counterplan. The state's counterplan. The cosmopolitanism critique. The capitalism critique. The court clog disad. And then the budget disad. Does anybody need that order again, or need to wait for the doc? Is anybody not ready? Perfect. 1 and C1 and 2 rejects their negative defenses overtly focused on the greenhouse state, but ignores risk factors leading up to extinction capacity on high evidence. 1 and C3, they obstruct other issues that guarantee warming is existential, source of conflicts of intersectional, a risk from disease, water, food security that kills adaptive capacity, increased resilience to other existential risks, even if migration scarcity is not a terminal impact. 1 and C, or the advantage, the power advantage. 1 and C1, yes, there's an impact to loss of tech leadership because nuclear in turns their arguments about global governance. Bargaining model encourages invasion of Europe, SES, and Taiwan. That's economic evidence, and tech leadership leads to global regulations of existential emerging technology, killer robots, military, AI, etc. That's the chain evidence. They dropped Black Star Racer existential prolonged collapse that causes pandemic spread and food breakdown that undermining societal resilience. That's the monarch evidence. No new answers. Advantage 3. 1 and C1, yes, great impact defense is about cyber attacks, not overload. Infrastructure collapse causes extinction. It triggers non-leader supply dispersal and prevents tech deployment to reduce existential threat. That's the Tankenberger evidence. 1 and C2, yes, emerging tech impact above. Dropped perception of tech leadership causes war, even if it's not actually game changing. 1 and C3, yes, ISIS impact defense does not assume weapons of mass destruction, proliferation of accessible bio-cyber and AI tech may spread possible endanger humanity. That's the Torres evidence. 1 and C4, not inevitable. ISIS expansion, anti-ISIS operations are successful absent a collapse of the Mosul dam. Economies of issue 2 impacts 1 is few, multiple worlds. A cross-chapter issuing nuances collapses. After and automatic opportunity cost from education. Second, dropped argumentative irresponsibility. No new answers, makes contradictions to no worse option, charging argumentative interaction. Safe so Austin's about research and Netflix, but last after waiting to Netflix is inevitable because of its T's. He was not inevitable because we can strange success or not. The Bermuda arguments, he subsets. We meet the app produces a carbon intensity kind of y counter-interpretation. Decarbon is reducing GT rather at almost 22 G-carbon. Or first reducing GT emissions to CO2 per 1 ground all energy gives a net takes out of carbon talent single electrons, etc. Those can't be absence of non-solvent, but do have small net benefits in mood absolvity, also infinite fraction all logs, and some could be fuel to have to price those. Second is education precision. Through the gas taxes and energy policy, there are only effects to fuel and economy-wide debates means debates never grasping on wind, solar, good, bad, which makes debates the same as Northwestern is NDT. Third is limits ground solved by clean 4T carbon advantage count plan saves prefer mechanistic constraints and neg. That's just lucid degree washing liability in the range for reasonability. You have to be able to beat a T with yes, no T principle. That's substance credit. T energy policy. We made clean energy policy not a topic burden, A including the floor cost of 13, including exceptions for the list of removes anything. That means clean energy policy alone cannot exclude or plan lancing 96 including. And we mean also, but this is exceptional list of terminal limitation is specified particular that which belongs to the GNV being a tax or the capital trade doesn't have OECD 17 because address extra values either by tax or price market for the use of environmental services. We made plan text in a vacuum. We made 4T carbonization has to have an independent meaning that allows for downstream pricing for establishes purpose of our CED and NDT pays for GD. The state court held that it must be forwards intended for or to further decarbonization reduces emissions explained above. We made non-hydropower reservoirs could generate energy in the same way coal could prop up a table of counter-interpretation. The clean energy policies promote low carbon energy. Tower Newton 19 display opposite explicitly for functions of clean energy policy. We propose a standard taxonomy with the USACB's plans to those promote low carbon energy per one after a fuel and electricity outruns enough to be net great negative systems solve nothing intrinsic to pricing kills fairness. Second, innovation upstream absent. It means to be never because beyond still positive use. The third is limits and ground. The smaller the less is solved check by advantage count plan stays clean and 4T carbonization and admin test the leakage are better against downstream for reasonability explained above. The court's counterplan permutation of both permutation to the counterplan trample is by court orders Caputo 316 trap. Ignore the court orders to return plain loads of Venice with the game members decision by federal judges orders highly comfortable for many sort of issue constitutional crisis. Write down and no spill over Farber 24 federal judgment. The convincers self-competition to constitutional issue pending shows the court is not a place where competition policy kind of behavior not a constitutional issue should be transcendent. It's the importance that the law does not address and you can work to a federal judge that and no there wouldn't be any basis for a hard to see how a federal judge can contribute to use the full lead of competition not a separate situation. The constitutional law speaks of it's not a problem in the world policy but steer by judgment, nicer control to dismiss the case she lacked, the power to record creation of a federal plan of venues, winner, trust, and a shadow, 7 reasonable, understanding of her role. One shot ruling substance to create a precedent and PQD's low now statement 14 sword. A race questions about the PQD before there has been for 1 cases in which the court you consider the PQD of shot. A Japan waiting to consider questions if it talks court. A dismiss only to political questions for neither involved individual rights. Asian counterplans are putting issues with ACLT forces to debate ourselves and independent possible proposals are unpredictable. The declaration counterplan permutation both includes the counterplan process permutation with the counterplan. I prefer it. External decombination is bad, legitimizing delay to the plan is good, infinite causal killing. Fairness and clash. Counterplans give each textually and functionally forced domain. Opportunity cost and avoids the use of link class. Can't solve one. Industry has no own and absolute if the damage. Owner does not for the costing problem of the pack for situation pertaining something to incentives or even owner face and no safety degradation does not. Insurance does not provide info by the damage of the summer compulsion is necessary is key. Imperial switching license and versus the court problem 2. The government has no blood so 22 for 30 years limited upon the CP of the Congress always blocking major policy for 20 attempts. Pursue pricing the areas of political opportunity each time unable to gain both country to block 3. Certainty and immediacy or key additional procedural processes delete hydropower investment during the time of 22. A challenge kept running hydro lengthening alternate regulatory process that cannot deter investment in hydropower. The additional requirements must be used for hydro the government says the government is years of planning during a long period including lengthy regulatory figures in the market and investment certainty goals. A large capital in front. Even small delays increase the length of hydro installation spike the cost. That needs to be recouped by utilities passing a law and international law is locked into client and solves nothing. Second, in 23, the leaders and Elliot are the history trying to get some from the first international norms that abandoned commitments to be which about team was already the EU. I show a sense of everything for rule, strong minute rule, New Brazil, China, Russia, Turkey, populism, and means new nationals and political function, inequality, deep surveillance. The throw velocity and retreat in the separate there's most been compromised and I love the war on terror as well as I brought a little bit up the targets of asserting anti-globalization movement included the WTO, international course that faces foreign populist party usually across the international lawyers. Again, the council of air back we seeing I love was contributing to our practices where it said rasa on them. This state's kind of plan the gap was built to be to one federal states can regulate that's on an FC their key aid damage and warming energy for massively reducing dams out produce emissions for collapse and effect by private dams in response to the kind of plan P hydropower federal dams to be the cornerstone of reliable generation including a trading class. There's in seconds per license and common cost for cars for created all electricity even if not interstate that's brown permutation both issues. A link because it diffuses blame permutation with the kind of plan the Cosmo the critique permutation do app permutation the app and the alt and all their instances nationalism solves warmer women 19 the idea of the nation later foundation but then was a positive moment because nationals had to go to the hold it the people represent the unified body of repose the dominant ideal that is also to be equal to national to help it establish boundary of weaponization mutual obligation of the right to the members of the nation should support one another in times of hardship that all the national powers into their allies that is not even the specific communication of their meeting people after at their transition inclusive of willing a coalition that had a rise of the country with all his centralized state of the press or better able to provide a state with public opinion policy ethnic allies that more likely to merge than lead multi-ethnic ruling elites and more equivalent national identities work your hard at identities and nation states are inevitable. We have to retool them in order to solve war cases. It is sad the Cap K framework the judge should imagine the hypothetical implementation of planning is either competitive alternative over this go. Anything else over the bar for neg office too low. One fairness too leak. You losing with the one you see predicts the game for the neg. Creating research is fair to shape the next advantage turns independent to the game. Only the balance opposite seconds clash comparing opportunity cost rates arguments to different alternatives. The turn defense and opposite prerequisites and making the office portable. Well, the link turn the K the FD constructs games not builds and nuance permutation. The two post growth is sustainable tiny 23 to go to discount normal mitigation technically given a huge R&D renewables and blood precision towards sustainable technique. The conservation efforts are increased in the world of federal state laws that has been extended of this schemes such as unique which was only difference in moment increases if there was evidence in markets of material access evolution or result of land price and fragmentation or trading again interest in a country with high GDP reason for government conservation lack of property rights lead as the tragedy becomes higher prices for encourage conservation and new exploration crow solves war sign out.
You said link turn. Do you want to say link turn?
No. We're
okay.
Go to court clock now. Nope. Can you get an all thing?
Yes.
No presumption to bluff yet, and we do not need to go through the courts of Trump, Thumps, and Woodward 3, 18 Trump and Alice, or the middle avalanche of lawsuits. I'm going to repeatedly test the legal factor to the wartime law constitutional crossroads. No link. It is clearly legal. Modified 20. No. Duplicative cases would be joined in one. Ruling on plain legality deters future litigants. No presumption case would lose because of fiat. Deter them in the future. Can't turn case after fiat. All necessary elements of the plan. Solvency for review. A kid from Trump 2002 the plan for fairness and clash and non-unique high hem 22 2002 case of climate litigation of the use of 1426 been filed in the U.S. Potato for the litigation continues in 2021 saw the highest number and the app turns it. We've read a warning impact on case. The budget is had no link. The app is for Congress. China's over in the U.S. now. Money doesn't solve upon Rada 313. China's a fast case in the U.S. negative Western purpose that applied critical thing enabling each other over rules. China's 230 times the capacity given the use of nation. But for money industry building more because the U.S. doesn't have the industry support is significant challenge to as in cost and production relates to the shortage of supply chain. Disruption rising material costs hinder progress. Chronic issues with shipbuilding means the bill doesn't solve grace or 42 every year. Inevitably, the use is not a vast enough for more funds or costs for 70 the past 20 years of pandemic construction, not a matter of reserve workers returning to 21,000 OEDs. As a higher enough 440,000 meet the needs of towns that won't be solved overnight. Okay. My notes first. Impact is to be felt in other markets. How Finiola et al. In 325 China world's eminent building power. It builds more fastly than 2024 than the and Tennessee. World War II. Go back to the critique. Socialism is bad for innovation, conservatism, and democratic cronyism, Adorno, and cost on 20 CPS. It can be problematic and make innovation look lower than any capitalism, never get and not immediate the same factors that cause it because it can be attack conservative innovation, disruptive conservative jobs are no longer needed to effect whereas the resistance we take in DPS. If people attack innovation will be discovered because of the practicing capitalism always in favor of the upon socialism and people are cutting edge. Products in capitalism and the job trading is key to the app, so we can also any aspect of the app's essential planning for the core population is infeasible, destroys the globe's wick and Engelhart 23, 8 billion consumers water carbon 20 billion to go about of a power 50 billion is a pretty when we generate the power of the area or is 126 billion, which is 7% of water solar from the current area larger, and then rush the fast and transaction for solving this. What is the solution on the market if the problems are broken into a smaller piece of the market gives the price to summarize the info need for the reason of deny feasibility of central planning. Go back to the budget case out of warning turns it destroys the US Navy. The US has been so far behind for so long, 24 times the capacity 230 times larger than what is out of the US revenue. The cost of reduced China reduced 359. I finished the tank card.
I'm getting this card sent.
Yeah, if you could send all the cards that weren't in the doc, I think that includes the international law impact defense.
Oh, that he didn't save that. I've attached both of those docs. Sent.
They're sent?
Yep.
Okay, are you good for cross-ex?
Yep.
Cap K link churn, why would dam owners choose to deconstruct their dams in response to the price signal set by the app?
The app says owners would have to determine if their dams are junk or not, which means that a lot of companies would have to destroy their dams
Why
because
would
they're
owners who
retrofit.
generate profit from the existence of these dams determine in the response to the app that their dams are bad
Because
and
the
just sell them
app's
off?
markets makes it not financially viable to continue all
So
of them.
the plan
If
makes
there's a risk that
large
a dam is
majority
going
of
to
the
collapse or
the
emitting
plan,
a
so
massive
your
amount
argument
of
is that the
emissions,
plan makes the vast majority of the dam sector not financially and profitably viable?
I don't know about like vast majority, but it does make a lot of
Okay,
it
so some of
not
them are
profitable.
financially
Some of them
viable,
are,
and the
which is
other
why
ones
trading
adopt-
is essential, is because it gives
Okay,
time for
that was
owners
my
to
next
decide
question.
which is
Why is trading key comparative to the alternative, which subsidizes this technology and just mandates that they reduce emissions?
We have made arguments for why trade is necessary because it allows owners to buy time to determine if it's junk or not. It's necessary in order to
so
solve the
trading
power
is key
advantage.
because of like too fast policy hurts investment. Is there another warrant?
That's part of it. The
Okay.
evidence also says that it's necessary to lower electricity prices.
Okay,
We
price
determine
rises.
exactly which dams we need to retrofit,
Why does
which ones we
trading
need to
lower
destroy.
electricity prices?
Why does trading lower electricity prices? I believe that's the second part on solvency in the 1AC. Let me double check. Okay, I guess I can't pull it from 2AC. The evidence is pretty good. That's just like, it's necessary to lower electricity prices in the interim. That's like,
No,
we
I get
determine
that, but why does
exactly which
trading
ones.
why does trading do that?
Okay, let me pull up this card. Give me 1 second.
What do you,
The evidence says trading generates the least costly hydropower balance, which
Why does it
reduces
incentivize?
inefficiency.
Why does it incentivize the
The
least
evidence
costly
says there are
hydro-
going to be inefficiencies via other methods that try to retrofit them, which gets passed on to consumers and quote spikes electricity prices.
Okay, but it doesn't say why trading solves them. I want to go to the court's counterclaim. Your Caputo evidence says that Trump ignored a court order about Venezuelan gang members. Why does that mean he'll ignore the counterclaim?
I think he's ignoring a lot of court orders.
But your evidence explains one case where he really
That's
wanted to do
one
that
example.
thing. Why?
Yeah.
Okay, why does Trump need to say yes? Like you've explained the app as like a FERC licensing project and an EPA regulated cap and trade system. Why wouldn't the agencies just implement it as a result of the counterclaim?
The courts can't mandate the FERC does something. That would cause a constitutional crisis.
Why?
What?
Court
Courts
interpretation.
can't be like FERC, you have to restructure your license.
Well, they can interpret the Constitution to then have the law mean that FERC and the EPA are statutorily and constitutionally obligated to do something.
We will read evidence in the block that's hyper-specific that says that Trump is determining what the FERC does.
Okay.
Durable fiat means the FERC cannot just say no to the
Okay.
plan.
I want to
It
talk
can
about
in
your.
the context of the
I
counter.
want to talk about your Farber evidence. Your evidence talks about one case in which a judge convinced herself that climate change was constitutional, and there was a bunch of outcry about that. I don't understand why this applies to the counterclaim, which is fiats that they ruled that way.
I think the evidence is pretty good that says that they lack standing and that there's not spillover between other cases.
Done. 633.
It's 6:33.
Yeah.
I'm sending it. It's the cap K, advantage 1.
Or Lucy Grace.
Well, we can, that's a good thing.
It's the cap K, advantage 1, 2, and then 3.
Yo.
Everyone's good?
Capitalism is unsustainable. One, planetary boundaries, settlers, profit, privatizing the environment, triggering systemic collapse like biodiversity loss, resource shortages, and climate change. The third, second, militarism that drives excessive military spending and resource wars that cause nuclear, biological, chemicals everywhere. That's third, all existential. I'm not reading this card because the Twissy did not say that cap solves war, so you know it's 100, and there's only a risk the app makes it worse. Framework, we meet their interpretation. We are not you link, you lose. We fit an alternative with link specificity to the plan. Counter trip the egg. Can win by disproving the app's economic theory, proposing about alternative for what? Non-reflection via solution that capitulates the dominant ideologies, questioning about representation and narratives. The only way to challenge capitalist realism. Fletcher. 23, major actually game of policy is hearing what is all industry policy was about to game we participate. The distribution of feeling power about this comfort, which about also main impediment to reality from perspective. A neoliberal hedge main shot has been to make the possibility of challenge the hedge, but role scholarship, explore conditional possibilities. Second is market logic, plain focus nationalizes. Business as usual precludes alternative ideologies. One number 25, judicious. On top of the next 100 of heterodoxy, corporate externalities, market CBA, you call for acknowledging dominance and policy national spaces go beyond neoclassical orthodox aggregate. Water policy and the carbon pricing is used in markets play in nationalization turn for an idea that everything reduces to the market begins with potential discussion of market questions, framework, fairness. We solve, ask get the plan. We just get ideology or ask get choice solves. Since they pick the one you see, figure out ideal is reciprocal. Our impacts outweigh fairness is internal link. The only effect at debate scholarship. 3, return a cap is more fair via widespread inequality and workers' implication. It's magnified if we can sever MBIs for their worst. Graph graphics with focus encourages word makes cross counterpoints and new city arguments. Netflix outweighs MBA that the functional limit issue loot. If you cannot defend markets, clash and model solves better. They act as the economic model framework. G is effective plain focus, clash inevitable, the literal active line line happens regardless. It's zero's fairness education is more important. Now, next is permutation do both. It fails ideologically, that's frameworks that mutual exclusivity. The all just built on a critique of MBIs and an explicit alternative, so the two cannot be combined. They're distinct economic philosophies. Opposite 24, socialism is the ancient alternative to capture production, organizing economic activity, market economy, and individual hand common ownership production to undertake social democratic control, typical markets where it falls outside competing balances and they cannot be combined. Near to 20 economy salad, they can be combined in attacks principles of organization, market planning, exclusion, and non-neutral market instruments, user cost expressions and distinct structures. They sever topical mandates. MBS hand decision making private entities. Period 11. MBS are flexibility centers, voluntary conscious CSC, which is not market. MBS hand over decision making to private actors compared with CSC. MSCs adopt price putting in effect long term for it to not be an active policy, but jumping the non existent policy to implementation. CEPs are legally binding. Douglas 20 extra split. CEP legally binding for exceeding exception requirements rejected if they sever. That's a good issue for clashing ground. Now the link turn is wrong. The plan definitionally links with capitalism. It is pay to pollute. That's per the one you see cross examination. As long as individuals invest in new technology, they do not have to decommission their dams. So they do not get to re-spin and re-explain them on NDT because the app specifically said that they do not decommission the dams because they just invest in new projects for hydropower, which we have impact turn even if dams are shut down. The plan still increases hydropower, which will impact turn for the sustainability debate, but the kinetic evidence is an impact turn to the entire purpose of the app. The app's understanding of dam through cost benefit analysis is that commodification of the environment is that you should commodify the environment, which always subordinates the environment to profits. That makes unsustainability certain, which means that this artificially outweighs the link turn, but offsets, which is the way the plan characters in the 2AC prioritizes cheap, low quality quantities that makes profit maximization, intrinsic capitalism, Polar War 20. Offset change, where reductions occur not about all offsets should be prohibited, played by quality problems create special interest groups, rules in favor of emitters, incumbency, quality, PES, scaling emphasis of low quality crash, natural crash, no consistency favors, reforms needed to water down emissions, encourage fairness to high change options, typically overseas for admin cost, higher emissions offset, most for short discern reforms, probably high quality, remain creative versus resist mandatory reductions, credits to benefit only at supposed to be digital, average not habits, absence of extras, now like simply different offset causal forces, explaining avoiding commissions gives an offset work down, trees, and additionalities necessary enables high resolution, few credible estimates exist, policies like scientific basis for leakage. Now the next evidence is growth sustainable. This to me evidence is not responsive because the evidence just cites one reject unity. He's the Australian prime, the former traditionally obvious incentive to be prioritized to growth, but decoupling is physically possible. Steward 25 growth is driven by ecological harm, positive linkages with GDP and emissions only time. Emissions decrease during recession, effects not at scale, and the application of these financial facilities and land ability sometimes you're likely to avoid warming, like limiting absolute global scale permanent. Effectiveness of tax limited growing econ 40 countries achieve the absolute decoupling to emissions. During limitation 35 articles for advent, there's decoupling 9% of reduction necessary 76. Include absolute decoupling even less likely in the future when solar free storage is built. Materials and low growth, the only constraint existence with the lowest warming is emissions gains opposite position. Decoupling's by Western rebound reduce savings by more than half to US gas and affecting 1.5% increase renewable will be added rather than replacing. Emissions are possible increase in 23 compared to 22 decoupled not much more effectively decoupling cannot get fast enough past 25 GDP rates. Couple fighting holes across most regions consensus about announcement of an absolute company global scale. I look to occur even problems which is assumption 57 cases no evidence transition high income economies offshore reduction no movement of an increased speed of the truck is not sufficient reduction to average regime climate easier Texas has to rise and sustain growth and reduce emissions. The only other war is EKC but that is neg. 125 we keep thinking EKC across up to 240 countries 80 countries struggling incorporated 12 novel variable and shape robust and goal social and shape more severe than inverted new pursuit of problem purely check not translated amelioration. EKC is wrong but soon an alternative EKC hypothesis is apparent for decoupling all the countries in an investigation development developing with strong background and hypothesis of proof is non-existent for most countries tested. Now the next thing is the alternative. The structure of power generation specifically in the context of dam is far better centrally planned. They functionally conceded to one Huber. It says that competition among firms create unstable contracts that makes supply and demand alignment impossible, which means that pricing volatility per the 1EC is a DA because you do not stabilize any of that because it is intrinsic to capitalism, which means that only socially planned and nationalizing dams solves better. The only argument is trading key once. We did not concede this, but it lowers emissions reductions. This is a net benefit to the alternative and a DA to the plan. Melling 24 NDT government and accident of the property sell credit songs sales and always contribute to the global water effect. Industry need measures which are just many. Think trading, keep trading nullifies efforts to reduce emissions can make sense of trading measures. Trading is not necessary. Maybe 1/3 of subsidy costs without trading. Trading with benefits of policies lower the cost of compliance of the bug on future. If they win, then capitalism and innovation is good. Then this is the DA to that. Trees and sound. Trading begins incentive for innovation. Low cost facilities will provide more for the total reduction. High cost facilities will provide the total required constructions. High cost for not deter innovation, so lower the cost of routine compliance through trading. Not encourage innovation. Trading countries for high to low cost facilities. Less incentive for innovation. High cost service catalyst for innovation. There's straight up the short efficiency that trading promotes in environments superior tech innovation states. Imposes trade requirements to switch between better the loss and avoid changes utility operators is good if they were upgrading with the lot of shelf technology. The Trudeau and Cott's evidence is wrong. Innovative disruption would not be rejected by workers. There's no warrant evidence, but the Apple example will be impact turns by the cards I read below. The quick evidence is also wrong, just price signals fail. But is a DA to the plan, which is explained at the top of the alternative overview. The all solves efficiency information better. The 822 American spread rational allocation profits, decision making turbulent overreduction, overreduction, lead crises, cyclical imbalances, leading roading profitability, low investment in competition, open to war, prevents whole user resources, economic competition, quality, very poor capacity, info, driven by market, market generates bureaucracy, overdevelops activities, we accelerate innovation by pooling resources out of 22 corporations, trust coordinates more the market, pooling innovation, reduces competition, trust by horizon, socialist, accelerate innovation, red place, collaborate, we fund market R&D, expand opportunities for entrepreneurship, ventures, get financing, public reduce impediments to innovation by current VCs, such as rolling high returns, socialized innovation that boosts most entrepreneurship, social rather than money, U.S. central planning is possible, and comparatively better, June 26, U.S. Germany, West, the public system of innovation created, institutions of recruited work, protected innovation through direct financing planning, the machine, chemical industry, positive remain U.S. greatest semiconductor industry, mid support and investment, economy with energy, guided, MNC, therapists, central planning, scientists, explore ideas, not much then we got private investors received participate Apple with little R&D, non-innovative risk, does not engage long-term research and the response city code for sector funded, 2% private firms appropriate publicly innovative products and capitalism cycles, innovation, B20, innovation depend on full creative labor and cause making and constantly worth, but necessity measures manufacturing creative requires you to avoid waste time work, knowledge, and fail capitalism directed in max market, making in a precarious position or little scarcity, transfers innovation makes money, money, protect competition structure, stable creation manages over duty to profits, the warming advantage. Environmental exploitation is inevitable under capitalism. That's observed by evidence. They do not solve methane. This is the DA to the plan. Offsetting emissions is totally nonsensical. When they read 1EC cards and said that methane is worse, so the fact that the plan can just choose not to decommission dams and actually increase hydropower means that the alt solves necessarily better than the plan, which means that the link flows neg and not a link turn. The power advantage straight turns capitalism straight turns AI. HON 19A sadly to extinction can be a coal maximizing perfect extinction be scientific goals. Capitalism rewards faster to market companies rush to put products in the market before competitor monitor where we first will be incredible. Companies do not think too much about friendly in order to do it first. It drives U.S. China competition. Hung 20 corporations lobby for Chinese low payment tech. Essentially, they don't change policy to dominate markets. Companies shift to Obama complain raise support to the level playing field. BRS, American international market competition. Beat a shift to BTB, state China's tariffs counter U.S. expansion. China rivalry driven by competition for world market trading into SY and war. The grid stuff, we turn grid internal is extreme weather and rising demand. The plan solves the alt solves both better, and there's no grid impact. Attacks are imminent. Worst cost. Widespread blackouts grid is segmented, which is the Larson evidence, which overwhelms their defense. The damage advantage, cascading failures, and critical infrastructure is wrong because of failure to repair. Obviously, the alternative would solve better per the internal link step on the grid stuff, but the grid defense applies here because there's no functional difference because it's just about recovering of power. ISIS, it's totally overblown. It's pure speculation. They cannot amount attacks given money. It's finished, which is the quickly evidence. conditionality is good. We get what we did. 1, block 2, after choosing the choice here corrects multiple options. They encourage same value, which undermines clash and turns skew. Second, that flex the next always reaction to after choice and infinite parameters. Increasing this is unpredictable advantages. Atoms and deficits. 3, arbitrariness. No separated models. No basis for theory. Unpredictable rules. Versus none because next always shifts to the goalpost to ruin predictability. For logic, find the best policy option is grouping applications and make the plan good. 5, innovation. Risk aversion. Maintenance fallback for safety testing and implementation. Skew integration. Rebuttal. 5, D's and procedural to substantive. Yes, new answers to twins is constructive. No argue responsibility. Just so encourages app irresponsibility is turning one off, and irresponsibility is good in the context that encourages app on the spot thinking. Dispo is ad hoc content makes app choice 2 powerful incentivize process playing sports the concepts of research and balance. I'm gonna read this card and send it out. Cap destroys insects and toxicity. Grant 25 toxicity major contributor class endocrine disruption interfere with the level of objectives. Is neutral to insects and amphibians inclining fast in space and few chains with lead to cascading collapses. Even since the survival current has for 20-30 years central deck collapse. They'll be capitalized terminally. I'm turning up this before.
I just got it. Good.
Yep.
Want to confirm the power advantage? You read the Han evidence?
Power advantage. Yeah, I read everything on this
Okay.
advantage except for Crag.
Okay. Perfect.
And
The
Bounce.
warming advantage. What's the warrant for the alt salts better?
Well, the alt would implement just like the cap, leave impact trade trading, which we think would
Yeah.
reduce emissions from the dams. You've said that was sufficient, which is your like 1Z O and an 8 evidence, so we think we solved that. But we also made an argument, which is the 1Z Durga evidence, that profit maximization inevitably subordinates the environment to growth, which means that the plan is insufficient to resolve that because that is what drives ecological crises.
The link to the critique. How does the app allow for offsets?
You quite literally just your whole spin in 1AC Crossings was that they get to offset and trade these permitting things to increase hydro whatever projects. Our argument is that that standard of trading continues the commodification of the environment, which cements growth. There's no scientific standard to establish what permitting, credits, etc. would actually entail in the context of emissions reductions, which we think continues the logic of accumulation and growth.
Framework. Can we weigh the plan and can we weigh
Yeah.
case impacts against the critique?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
We've just made arguments that, well, for the competition for the perm, we think ideology is a relevant question, but in the context of the app getting to weigh the plan, you do get your impacts. We just think we link turned and said all solves better.
What do we need to win in order to access the permutation? We have to win no link first.
You have to win that solely evaluation of your framework interpretation, which was like links can't be about epistemology and things like that. So you have to win framework first to win the perm.
Okay. I'm confused about this innovation stuff. You have said the alternative leads to faster innovation than capitalism, correct?
Faster socialist innovation that's not profit incentivized, that maximizes profit over safety. So like in the context of things like AI, the Han evidence says that because they're so incentivized to get to the market first, they don't actually regulate the technology and make sure that it doesn't, blow back against society. This also applies to things like decoupling, where we produce CCS and other things that are environmentally unsafe, but they get to the market because there's an incentive for firms and corporations.
I have a
to
question
pay
about
back.
this Han card. What piece of evidence says AGI is possible? We've gotten to the point where transistors can't get any smaller, so how is AGI possible? What card says it is?
The argument is not necessarily AGI. This is just an internal
What?
return to your thing that like we need steady AI to outcompete.
This card is just AGI is bad. What do you think you get out of
No,
this card?
this says that the goal of maximizing profits drives unstable AI development. Like we're not saying that this causes AGI that outweighs.
Okay,
We're
so
saying
you're
that
not saying ASI causes
you have
extinction,
said
which is the one to
US
the top.
tech leadership and like demand for
I just want to make sure we
AI.
don't need to make the argument.
No, you
that's
do not need to
we
read
do not
AGI
say-
defense. You're not
Okay.
going to go for that like outweighs. If that's the question.
The one was, politics, fog, Unilag, states, Cosmo.
Alright.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm gonna do it again. And then corner.
But yeah.
I got politics.
Okay, politics. Clog. Unilat. States. Cosmo. Courts.
Of course, is the counterplan,
The counterplan,
not
the
the international law counterplan or the DA about the courts.
Neither. It's the court's counterplan. Constitutional guarantees.
We downloaded.
Okay. Kansas, are you good?
Yep.
Panel good?
Politics can see the U.S. behind and China already back in the U.S. That means the impact is inevitable, regardless of warring capitals or fall. Control the far larger internal link to warming the plan. So it is offense for us. Clog it, kick it, not going for it. Capitalism is larger internal link to water wars, which was their only turn on the DA. Unilat, kick it, concede the perm. None of the deficits can be cross-applied to courts since it isn't uncertain or non-immediate. No cross-applying perms either, since they never said any tax and perms can only be construed to apply to the counterplan that they made it on. Courts overcome. The government says no because they would comply with court rulings, even if unpopular, which is on the courts. States counterplan, kick it, concede the perm. Theory is a reason to reject the argument on the team. Cosmo, okay, kick it, concede the perm. Nothing applies to cap because it maintains the structure of the nation. Courts counterplan. Defense corruption outweighs on magnitude, contractors, bankroll, endless interventions, diplomatic fractions, and arms raising successive instability and propagation in World War III, which is the Ubel evidence not bringing new impact cards since they dropped the terminal impact. So you know it's existential and outweighs any deficit based on sufficiency. Permutation both fails. One, causation, same thing will be denied because of the June 24 diffuse impact satisfied causation, regulated emission, court health causation, satisfied court child division, meaningfully distributed or policy was a factor. Two, strike down, double taxation is illegal. Actually, skip that card. Two, comment the perm rubber stamps, congressional or executive action, so the DC is depoliticized and it's no longer court intrusion. That's our 1 and C. Linked evidence. Three, voidness. It's an advisory opinion prohibited by doctrines or disputeness and finality. 86. Advisory opinions are banned. This not only about ruling hypotheticals, but requires special limit cases that are alive for CCB by future events, disputes, or other disputes no more than hypothetical. The finality or decision of judgment will be subject to another branch. Do the counterplan serve as a voting issue for clashing ground? One, it does not adopt anything instead of legislation or agency regulation. The counterplan authorizes damages and expands standing to permit lawsuits that compel the plan. Everything below is independently a T argument since they've explained the F is for licensing and EPA enforcement in cards and cross-ex. Adopt requires legislation. Bender 7 adopt means by law to protect environment. Corkins at the understood adopt means not so that applies to the environment. The court votes today. 11-9. Court is fine adopted. The contract back and take by legislative body right on button opposed by legislative body with majority votes to formulate that. 2. Not clean energy policy. Energy policy is either prudential or congressional, not judicial. Apollo 17. We define energy policy as a compromise national energy plan expands here from presentation or congressional lawmaking policy is made in both venues. Result domains, legislative instrument, LSA 5, legislative policies, and use the term result. Independently mandates. The result of a court order is never fiated. Pascal 18. Decision not self-fulfilling because limitation and organized decision congressional lines of the decision to carry out directive. Evaluate competition through mandates, not affects anything else, makes no counterplan competitive because any action could result in the plan. Prefer our definitions. 1. Precision. Don't just treat adopt and policy as filler words that mean nothing. Each has a precise legal meaning and exclude the courts. 2. Limit. They both lit off the time by allowing tiny courts and agency acts that skirt court ground and morph into unpredictable precedents. 3. Agent counterplans. Good. They test implementation, education. Everyone agrees climate change is a problem. The question is how we solve it. No abuse. They have to defend the most powerful Congress in the world on the topic of climate change. Literature is overwhelmingly apt. The counterplan does solve the case. The Supreme Court rules that the government is required to mitigate climate change via injunctions and adjourning emissions. That alone is sufficient, but complying the plan ensures agencies in Congress follow on with an identical policy, breaking the PKD that's Gorlick and Lane. It catalyzes a significant and effective normative shift. June 20. One judicial leader of the climate change to give direction shift interventions that climate the government the privatizing the veterans here meeting ambitions by thousands of topics engaged with the attributes and also judicial review. It's essential to judicial intimidation to cover restrictions and tenable organized rights to climate laws due process and B. CD the must get information by serving as check on bridges. Other branches follow on empiric trove. 18. Civil rights exaction by the courts. Bushman claims to scope of authority by the court challenges confinement. Bushman will by their reason to accept compliance factors. Reinforce obedience to all courts for Republicans and Democrats to administer compliance with 70 that report alone. Pressers to adhere. This is legal consent against 19 officers both law courts are to binding judges against the Constitution and identified the associated by everyone precisions agrees given. All the courts are binding even Nixon's running on any issue. You must agree. All Trump does say yes. Truancy, Grove, and Gantz were written about Trump. It says the historical record is absolute. Trump will back down in the face of powerful legal penalties, and his cabinet and lawyers will enforce the ruling. Aristotle and Ned. Even Nixon obeyed the court. 2. Courts can enforce their orders. They can levy fines, disbar attorneys, or even send officials to jail. Abusive 25. Courts have been called for punch, not for cover broad discussions. They look at that order, impose jail, fine, call Trump to get a fine $10,000 a day. Criminal contempt, disobedient party, public officials are within scope of contempt, power towards an issue. see right to main evidence. Compulsion of major legally required action to commit our 20 by 32 order finds in arrest motions that make arrest and force order president elected official retaliation Trump provided by this 4 stats. The courts have an A success rate. DM20 Trump failed 93% of the time the court litigators deliver blows to Trump in successful challenges. There are many possible grounds with enter their next piece of 24 evidence. 1. Existing a healthy right to healthy environment, public trust doctrine, equal protection, due process, corporate liability, statute enforcement, nuisance towards all of them prove that the court can have existing doctrine compel the plan. 2. Preamble or God's time. Preamble outlines perfect union, justice, common defense, general welfare. Preamble often places rule and decision courts. A court preamble legal force for future and not to be ordinance required. Solution that finds the limitation in preamble. The absence of the plan is a crime against future generations. Yoden, to description of crimes against gender included after the 90 years of political, economic, and crimes cover a range of quantifiable interpretation by reference to IHL acts will be repeated by crimes drawn from international law. The text specifies constitutional guarantees standing, which is sufficient for durable fiat to solve. So even if it's not likely that there is a constitutional interpretation that compels the plan, the court would just find one. The counterplan is key and spills over. Compelling climate remediation is an explicit oversight that Julian avoided and violates additional command to defer climate policy to the 2 other branches. 1. Ruling losing the PQD, creating supremacy questions that intersect with the Constitution and SFP. That's a linked evidence. Litigation ensures sweeping constitutional precedent. After 24, because litigation during political action, during climate invocation, broad constitutional government against sweeping opinion, and courts are made to concern, and that decision about obligation for constitutional order. 1 case is sufficient. Price 16, limitation of courts of the residence, constitutional doctrine, for justification for deference ability. It was in any case of conflict, separation of power, non-enforcement, political action, non-fight conflict, for limits on judicial power. PQD is strong now. Their evidence is from 2014 and doesn't assume recent trends. It's the default practice for adjudicating judicial issues, specifically blocking climate litigation and protecting defense contractors. That's lying. And Eisenberg. Empirical data is neg. Bradley 23. Scholarship doctrine is not about private pillows, but totally is empirical data. The PQD because this is for all court decision from stage to this trend is not just registered to deep after course so PQD is live and all courts. Discuss after than other doctrine. Juliana proves. Thompson 22. Circuit dismissed grounds, student grounds are providing plaintiff relief, favors non-justice political questions on. It's not the first case which PQD uses to back to climate and not because more recent empirics are neg. 2021 Secretary of the PQD did not power claims individual political right political question and true claims relationships and ratio. The block to remember without the election first amendment equal protection of township presented. Political questions. Theory agent counterpoints is wrong. No link. It's a pick, not an agent counterpoint. Functionally competitive counterpoints with federal agents are good. 1. Testing. It disproves the topic, making it predictable and core negative ground that finds the best policy and is fair. Any defensive topical action beats the counterpoint. 2. Next fact the topic is unlimited. Executive excluding agent counterpoints encourages district court or single agency has to make it impossible to be next. 3. Education. Chernovsky use legislative judicial and Chevron and consequent finding policy preference judicial decision making legal structure keep much time. Most people to understand litigation leading by certain cases are followed by discrimination digital preferences empiric scholarship environment and under level requires more significant understanding of judging environment decision making in general. 4. Literature. So many in director of MBI digital active and parts legal corporations like the minimum risk of litigation.
Mark the Salary 2 card at risk of litigation.
7:30.
130. Sending the cards. While I'm doing that, the order is warming advantage. Everyone's here, right? Yeah. Warming advantage, power advantage, damage advantage, the quartz counter plan, the capitalist boutique. Does anyone need that again? Saving and then sending. They are sent. We know what everyone is. Vision Hub.
Yeah.
Panel. Great.
Warming is existential disease, migration, food, skin, insurance, adaptation, resilience, existential risk. The plan does not cause more damage. Both saves or decommission, solves both ethnic missions, divert connection, but alternative. Cannot solve it because that's the trade stuff on the cable to the second offset. Power offsets also overall bitch by decommissioning. The dirty power, the power advantage, but growth better for AGI Hudson. The 23 meter will be on the giveaway point itself. Will be have to underestimate its value as a half a drift meter. If it have the habit of the would be able to push a button and destroy AGI. The development is likely to multiple places. Let me put it. I can use some market. A good curtail the investors on the powers of the investors watching. The C companies succeed. The slow and acid by one. The taxi measure on the thing gets the trade with the customers. Will switch the powers and after the plug from the wall. They are plugging from new F1. Goes talking about other programs talking about a loss of tech leadership, existential and perk fade. If everyone's advice Russian Chinese invasion of hotspots that's currently dropped, which means that if we went in deficit to the alternative means that they cannot overcome this because it's the reason why that in China paces it quickly and fast, which is all other stuff. Concede no impact to grid not go if it takes out cap turns in, which is well, but did not say that it turns they had development, which is above damage advantage. Concede defense not going for conditionality is going to issue 2 impacts, 1 skew, good multiple worlds, cost plays chewing, new other clubs gap strategy, other money opportunity cost turn education. Second, argument if your responsibility makes 100 additions and no risk option dodging alternative. Argument if interaction disposed also office of research shouldn't affect flex with laws. They have choice, no skews, but decision solves because they think the decision they made Netflix is inevitable because of dissents and T. The logic is wrong, the theory is not arbitrary, but condo is less random, arbitrary concession get up 82 SC treating thinking dispo. This explicitly we kick programs out when a straight term that's in dispo. Innovation is inevitable, better, justifies good innovation, not bad innovation, dispo. It's not bad, it's also flux by bouncing the game, gives the half negative equal chance courts. Per addition to the counterplan is example of the plan first, actually the counterplan. They include every relevant word in the plan is the denial of the definition of the device's plan plus second functionally courts can adopt. They court 20 dur, but after the limited courts make a love the adoption of rules governed broadly execute policy gets. The 50 policy, a plan on the pursuit by the government, it can be judicial gold. 55 of policy means that established by law, courts are consented. Clean energy policy, judicial, EDF, 19 the court, apology, clean energy policy provided. The CSC resolved has obedient PAP, 18 resolved a clause on the possibly state policy called for by the resolution. Agent competition is bad, zeros every F, EP do the plan and have quotes are cold as 0 deficit moves every F and ensures the 0 F wins, precision, alternative, we're citing. The far better definitions will of course assign all defined adopt a requiring Adrian to criminal action, prefer legal definitions they define how the government actors act and how would react to the resolution's language limits no explosion drop from T. If an F solves at least a generic, you don't need Paul. The politics are agency competition because clean for decomposition MBI all require equitable ground advantage counterplans and states. Check truly egregious examples means if counterplans are not key. Congress key is not a good task because unlimited nature of negative fiat means you can fiat that aid deficit by having Congress agree or courts and courts choose the literature but refocus the main away from the question of the app being good. Explicitly said in the permanent counterplan that it is not mandating the FERC to act. That's key. Drop from states. The Commerce Clause requires the FERC to regulate all measures but not understand only the average forms of federal licensing. That is key to incentivize hydropower uptake with Brown, not reforming that. The zero substitutes cannot reply to intergenerational dams and emission transmission cannot get FERC would apply because it gets off of the different being a different action. They would not reply because even if the courts could imply the actions, the Trump would say no in the context of executive agencies because he's bringing the DOE and gutting it. The one-shot ruling so set of precedent no spillover for PQD Sakwati. The 15 decisions allowed not by guidance, no justice, follow the doctrine in a consistent way. The statutory interpretation adjusting the several started decisive so the consideration with different weights out of the rules not like a church only the decision. PQD is low now, only be evidence as Supreme Court cases every day. Cars bad. Lower court cases which are relevant for the impact. PQD is never used on a federal level. One on Bradley. This shows one C Bradley shows on the Tracy Bradley shows a cheap drop after 2020. Do you have stuff on Discord, Ethan?
No, you're
Okay. We good? Yeah. Cap. Insect's impact is wrong, inspiring in team. 25 clips of insect inevitable compounds of the trigger finger form on the head decided as a culprit of the water extinction of watching very long, study widely accepted the largest, and definitively analyzed extensions with an atom, this into the sector declining, less rapidly, and of this overstates the trend population increasing in the corn, so it's associated with increasing population, there is no data to support claims that a species, bond coming to conduct the societal authority to declines, leveled off in reverse, PFAS interface and scientific bullshit, moss, 25 it's not stronger, not strong, not enough, and concentrations far from established in study, observed decline of sperm, and South America, Africa, carbon, such publication by limitations, and the influence of study chemical circulation, over factors, the was on the straight, the law, between 1917 and 2011 doesn't identify and explode extrapolations on scientific assumes for himself squad, the court identifiable on scientific interpretation of data, the knowledge was risky rights, a hyperbole on science, collapse of impression is unlikely framework, but we get to weigh the app that's conceded to its cross speed is good, one of less matching future scenarios of action we have to take, result in every validity, the ethical consequence of that action and model that fear results in questions of would rather than should, which turns debate until would exploitation actually support the plan, those debates are horrible, we can equate 100% second, it's enabling, and empowerment only when combined with radical hope, and matching new pictures of the world criminal help awareness to understand the contours of power, and empower activities that contribute to climate change, brief impact turning the terminal to all of the framework offense, worker logic good, that's a trading key warrant on the alternative, permitted to do both is not severance, includes the entire plan, but we're not going for it, so not racing direct the team, clean enter from the courts, as it's legally binding, is not required, we define everything on courts, growth, there's no utility growth is unsustainable, while win growth stops there, or growth is sustainable prices, if resource constraints are predictable, they'll be priced into the market, companies grow L will grow as well, innovation technologies, use less, recycle resources, find more, that's 2D, don't equate sustainability with an impact, no single warrant is sufficient, they kill all growth, or everybody must put a time frame differential, and impacts otherwise condition inevitable growth, solves the environment, drop from 2 renewables are zero, the tech and outpacing fossil energy, the second conservation of rich climate, the countries have the money for stricter predictions, the predictions and lower emissions efficiently controlled by the cost curve, that's 2 yes, decoupling the coffee, 19 happens, does markers from revenue materialization and material product agriculture improve dramatically over 450 mega, because return to nature, the fertilizers like plants at absolute use, until cold alternative coffee, 5% of your cows, but if you improve at 30% of first illuminate so heavy electron elements, the total 75 gets better, items vanish to the outcome of crude oil production double, natural gas production, jump by 43%, Ethan, Discord?
Do the alt first.
Alternative. Can't solve the case. One, owners don't know if the dams are drunk or not. Get trying to give time for comments. The great optimal balance for the safe dams, key for warming, that's the Welsh Open, a second efficient trade generous, the least cost hydropower balance on. 23 trade. Also, for can have unlimited this, unlimited purpose I cannot uplift rating results in allowance that put a highest use to recover emissions. The cost is to maintenance for the least cost production cost under CAD trade where 50% lower the RPSDs are effective relative to the CNC and less flexible system. But on that much check chain, those inefficiencies get passed on to customers, spiking electricity prices, even if the counterfeit results in a ton of hydropower before evidence contest and plan over engineers. Offsets bad card every trading pit card that they stole from KU was just about biofuels because if we read it against them and not for our app. There's no reason why it's applied to dams, which means that the 2 hours new and get new answers. Can't solve advantage to centralized fund economy, structurally unable to mimic the social environment that cultivates innovation. Go 20 days to social was not good to justify innovation, the competition between winners and losers, which is different when they have species, the capital sense species, and social species critical to fostering innovation and the fascination of critical structure process. Many projects are needed for the figure successes. The crap side description of new products that to make them say of old firm APC and extension of all parts of the capital supports APC, which are dedicated to investing in promising projects. Market to promising projects.
33.
There you go.
one good? Counterplan, critique, condo. So page 3. Yeah. Everyone good?
The counterplan solves the entirety of the case to prevent internal defense corruption. That prevents arms racing to planet fractions and endless intervention which ignites World War III with Russia and China. It's try or die. The impact to internal net benefit is 100%, so you know extinction from corrupt defense country is coming in the status quo, and the counterplan is the only way to chance to solve it. We all die in the world of the app from defense wars, so you must vote neg to avoid it regardless of the case impacts. The frame is sufficiency. The net benefit is massive and deficit need to outweigh it with the tangible impact. Now, perm to the counterplan. Framing issue, they have dropped mandates competition. The counterplan never mandated the plan, forcing us to win. Agencies and Congress say yes. The result of a court order is never fiated. Courts rely on other institutions to carry out directives, so you should evaluate competition based on mandates, not effects. If a counterplan possibly resulting in the plan was grounds for rejecting it, then no counterplan would be competitive, since any action could theoretically result in that plan. States could result in the plan to federal follow-on, and command and control counterplans could result in the plan by the formation of market-based coalitions in the future. Hold the line. Not a single argument on this was in the 1AR. It's ELAMs and NDT. Nothing can be cross-applied from other parts of the competition. It is independent of every single counter-competition they read on the ancient debate, because even if the courts could do something or any part of the plan could be interpreted as the counterplan does not have the courts necessarily do the plan, so there's no fiated results and no fiated effect that could possibly be construed, but which circumvents all of the definitions they've read, because even the best interpretation of the plan being the counterplan does not fiat anything related to the plan, so it could not possibly be an interpretation of the plan. The counterplan does solve every deficit. Court action galvanizes entire federal response to climate change, necessitating the plan in response to constitutional guarantees that compel the plan. The counterplan and the Supreme Court rules that the government is obligated to do the plan on constitutional and environmental standing doctrine grounds, which results in agency adoption from a different starting point. This solves FERC. It would likely result in FERC reforming its licensing processing in the same way that the AF does, and just as a result of a court order. The counterplan would also reform federal licensing because it operates at a federal level. They have dropped Grove and Gans that says that Congress has empirically followed on to court orders that regardless of how much they do not like them, judicial intervention is able to galvanize support across the board, since there's no other higher authority and they must defer to the Supreme Court. Trump does say yes. They've dropped that he doesn't even need to say yes in the first place, since agencies would act independently and it would be incentivized to follow on, since they cannot disobey the court. But they've dropped the cards once again that says that our other branches will comply, and Gantz is explicitly about Trump. It says that when the court challenges policies, he inevitably follows on. They've also dropped that courts can enforce their order, which causes administration-wide follow-on, or evidence says that the courts can levy fines or hire attorneys if they don't respond to their orders, which means that the administration has an incentive to follow on. Trump has lost 93% of the cases in court, which shows that he does respect the legal system and he will be struck down. Yes, spillover. They've dropped the Adler evidence that says that aggressive litigation on climate action forces sweeping reevaluation of what the constitutional landscape looks like. They've dropped the price evidence. One case is sufficient to get all attorneys on board, because justices respect the idea of precedent and political question doctrines guide the goalposts of what it means to be a justice. Their evidence is about stare decisis and not the PQD. Their evidence does not rise to the level of, quote, judges don't respect precedent, which is what it needs to, since the counterplan definitionally contravenes on the PQD, which is something that they have not contested. Now, PQD high is not offense. Remember that their evidence is from 2014. It is totally irrelevant and just asserts a random warrant that is not assumptive of 3 cards in the 1R. PQD is high now, but for the Bradley evidence, it is a meta-analysis empirical assessment and says that for all court decisions since 1962, the PQD is, quote, alive and well. This, yes, may assume the lower courts, but it's still applied in the upper courts, which is what's demonstrated of the other pieces of evidence to Giuliani court case, demonstrating that it's being upheld in the future. It says it's, quote, not the first case it was used, and, quote, will not be the last. This matters because it's only hard read specifically in the context of climate change and how courts are actively deferring and choosing not to rule on climate grounds based on the PQD. So you should prefer specificity on this question alone. Recent empirics are neg. The Dotson evidence says that Texas was just used PQD in the Rucho decision to stop challenges to equal protection clause, which demonstrates that it is being upheld now, and you should scratch their piece of evidence. Skinner is too old. That was said above. It's not responsive. Doesn't matter if it's lower court because it does fill up, but our evidence seems, but concession in the net benefit means that it is still try or die. But back to the perm to the counterplan does compete, adopt policy, and resolve all mandate that the AFI legislation prefer one education, drop standard from agent counterplans bad. Our evidence says that distinction is crucial when analyzing environmental policy because everyone agrees climate change is bad, and the best idea is how to solve it. Second ground, small court agency staffs with precedent advantages are awful because NEG has no unifying generic against them. This answers functional limits as AFI get advantage ground and states deficits based on court-based action. Functional competition is the only thing that matters because if conceded textual competition is bad because word games are not real world. Agent counterplan is good, necessary on an AF bias topic where everyone agrees that climate change is bad, warming advantages are OP, and has been beating energy days and fossil fuel days all year. States do not check courts agency result in unpredictable deficits, and there's no precision because our evidence is just better. It is definitional. It says that all courts agree that adopting clean energy policy is legislative. Their evidence is one-off examples I don't have intention to find, but we need to answer this in the 2NR because it is still a topicality argument about courts adopt. If we win our definitions, are better vote neg on T, independent of conditionality, independent of whether or not they win substance because they violate and are the FERC conditionality. or Kafka conceded permutation, framework, whatever, there's no offense, nothing can be cross-applied, combo. Conditionality is good and key to neck flex. Only interpretation of what we did in this round solves. 1. No cost counterpoints, they are key to neck flex because the F gets sandbags the best offense to 2AC multiple counterpoints that test the F at multiple angles. It's key to check back. Second, neck choice is key to neck strategy because otherwise the force is going for the worst option. We are impact turning to AC strategic thinking and argumentative irresponsibility. It's inevitable because there are always choices to be made, but without conditionality, strategic thinking will terminally screw the neck. We've never been able to extend multiple counterpoints or things that contradict or test the F from multiple angles, which they have conceded is a necessary part of neck flex. Framing and shift the entire flow, the one air conceded arbitrariness. They need to win. The marginal increase in half offense is worth sacrificing an entire round, especially in NDT doubles with no resolutional basis. It incentivizes theory prolife and substance credit up, and it turns their offense. Apps will always proliferate new theory arguments that structurally put the neck behind because we are always one speech behind. Neck flex outweighs. 1. Topic bias. Apps can be shifty. Sector specific subsidies. Since red wording is meaningless, econ politics are thought by new events every day, and Trump has killed every other DA. Second, debate bias. Who's get away with murder on the case? They get first class speech, and instead topic for the debate and have infinite prep. It outweighs skew. It's low risk because skew is inevitable. All causes like speed. Another off case check. These more add-ons were needed, and 2 saying nothing on case means they'll always get back to the game. Doesn't turn education because there wasn't a warrant attached, but argumentative responsibility we solve better because it encourages better research with grads, prefer grads, and facility because debate is not a case activity. Where college students who survey multiple topics provide better insight to what to do with their life. Disco doesn't solve. 1. App choice. The defense is wrong. Forces the neck into the least strategic option that guarantees a lack of neck flexibility. Second, high cost of counterpoints. Neck teams should be able to shock and counterpoints in the 1C to test the logical intrinsics of 1C advantages, but Disco encourages them because they can always be impact turn.
1/3.
Yep, starting.
I got it all.
Yep. The power advantage, and then cat plan. Okay. Everyone skip? Power and then the counterplan. The power advantage, so advantage 2 and counterplan.
I misheard you say cap K, not counterplan.
I totally could have said it honestly. This has been a long weekend. Okay. Everyone skip? Loss of tech leadership is existential. 1. Fog of war and imperfect information incentivizes Russia and China to invade hotspots under the guise of having a window of opportunity which goes nuclear. That's chronic evidence and directly turns their terminal impact. 2nd is emerging technology. Autocracies will misuse the technology, but US global governance allows safe regulations. That's the chain evidence. Any risk of a deficit to the counterplanes means that a case categorically outweighs because of certain existential impact will use defense to their internal link, and there's no time frame for any of their arguments in any block in a decade. In decades, the PQT means that there's a zero risk of any of their impacts in the short term. The counterplane. FERC licensing is key. Cases conceded to a 1% risk of a deficit is the reason the case has to categorically outweigh. The Commerce Clause requires FERC regulates all electricity, even if not interstate. Only the affirmative reform of federal licensing, which is necessary to incentivize hydropower uptake. That was one easy ground evidence. It was an argument that was dropped by the bloc. FERC will say no to the counterplan. Trump controls the entirety of FERC and would encourage them to say no. Trump does not actually respect the court rulings. Every decision in the status quo, Venezuela, etc., proves our argument. He is actively violating them in the status quo, and negative arguments fly in the face of the real political environment. Trump is a puppet that will control FERC's strings. He would disagree with the plan, and the counterplan cannot durably fiat that the FERC follows on. So Trump would encourage them to say no because he would hate everything about the plan. So durable fiat is necessary for anything about the affirmative to solve our impacts. Now, the PQD is low. They say that their evidence is about higher courts. This is an assertion without a warrant. It is not true in the context of any of their evidence. The neg courts are explicitly about lower courts, but their impact evidence is based on the Supreme Court's use of the political question doctrine. They have a single instance of PQD occurring in text, which does not prove that it's high now. Our evidence says that it occasionally happens, e.g. 20 of 20 cases in which it was brought up, it actually occurred, but it is incredibly low in the status quo. Only we have evidence about the Supreme Court cases. Every neg card is about low court cases, which is relevant for their impact. The political question doctrine is never being used on a federal level, even if it is occurring in lower courts. They also dropped the indictment of the one in R. Bradley. They inserted a chart which shows that there's been a steep drop after 2020 on a local level, which proves that it's not being used now. There's no spillover. I did not catch the warrant in the 2 and R for yes spillover, and the 2EC said no spillover, and the 1ER said read a card for it. A single shot ruling does not establish a precedent which is necessary to solve all of their impacts. Other courts will just ignore the counterplan's ruling. The 1ER says Suzuki evidence, of course, do not let constraints lead them into decision-making decisions, and prior decisions are non-binding guidance that they can always ignore, which proves that there was no spillover to resolving any of their terminal impacts. Now, permutation to the counterplan. The counterplan agrees more than it disagrees with the affirmative, and the process is not mutually distinct from a plausible interpretation of the plan. Dropped textually, it contains all meaningful words in the plan, with the exception of the actor. It makes their mandates arguments irrelevant because this is a question of textual computation that the 1ER explicitly flagged, and the 2 and R dropped. Textual computation matters. The 1ER explicitly said that not relying on that justifies plan plus, which is bad because that means that the counterplan that is plan plus solve world hunger is functionally competitive, but it's not textually competitive. Drop that this should outweigh and frame the competition debate, even if the mandates of the counterplan are somewhat distinct. This matters and is the worst form of competition. It creates process trash and indeterminate picks out of normal means. Who establishes a market? How are policies normally enacted? Are all tax enforced to established by the IRS? Basing competition off the status quo couples the act to current governmental imperfections, which gives the neg an overpowered toolbox of ways to make the plan slightly better. Reg neg, consult any actor, public, private, mythic. What would Jesus think about the plan? How do you know that the plan is a good idea if you haven't consulted the impacted businesses, communities? All of these counterplans are more into do the plan if it's good, which is unbeatable under a functional alone. Elimination rounds of the NDT should flip app. Any risk that their model is worse for competition is the reason that you vote app facially. They say functionally. The resolutional language supports court action being topical. Subpoint A is adopt. Courts make law through the adoption of rules. That's the McMurray evidence. Subpoint B is policy. The government broadly executes policy, and that can include by law or by the courts, which is the Ganson Gold evidence. C, clean energy policy. It can be done by the courts. They have upheld and made policy. That's the EDF evidence. D is resolved. It is irrelevant. It has zero meaning. It just calls to state the resolution, which is the PAFAP evidence. This includes their understanding of mandate agencies act. Dropped EDF, a clean energy policy that just says that the courts enforce and mandate policy, which forces agencies to act. Adopt is adopting rules in the form of policy, which is directive for agencies to act. Prefer it. Asian competition is bad. The negative would always get infinite EPA and DOE and course counterplans against Congress apps. Fiat that every branch has the legal authority to do that, and the app is just cooked at the end of the debate. There was a reason the MQD counterplan we reached the auto app on competition. There was not a substantive deficit to it. This is every counterplan under their interpretation. Theory will not check it because it begs the question of whether in the year of our Lord 2025, Rafael Peri would sit down and conclude that it was anything but arbitrary exclusion that collapses into no neg fiat. It surprised the app of substantive debates. The rush to Congress key can only go so far because of a negative fiat and infinite advantage counterplan claims to solve your deficits. Instead, debates should actually be about whether the energy policy or MBI is bad. Of course, doing an MBI overturns the MQT. The MQT is decent. So is the capitalism K that is like the command and control counterplan. It says that neoclassical economics are bad and that the frame of market failures to solve climate change is ineffective. This is a stronger version of debate. This is an impact turn to their model of competition that was poorly mishandled in the 2 and R. Even if the mandates are different, that is based on how courts are different and act distinct from agencies, which means that if we win this is bad, it is a reason to vote affirmative. That turns education, made obvious the points of education, by skirting debates away from questions of is the plan good to what actor would be best, which is far worse. Dropped functional limits to solve ground. If the gap solves a link to generics because of a slew of terms force arguments the negative is guaranteed. Clean, forward decarbonization, MBI, all ensure equitable ground and advantage counterplans to check truly egregious examples. Oil, LNG, and econ are sufficient and guaranteed. We've extended all of our interpretations and justified it with Asian competition pad, which means you should not vote a negative on topicality, conceding the vacant conditionality which mitigates a lot of their offense, which means there's only a risk of our arguments. We should not end our careers against a bullshit course counterplan. Good debate. Debate. Debate.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, no gaps.
We're good now. Half cards are sent.
talk about the decision? Do you want the long version?
I think we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
Well, I'll still say something good about YouTube because I really have a tremendous amount of respect. I really enjoyed just looking how much you've developed as a debater, as a student over these years. I didn't have a lot of time, opportunities to judge YouTube, but it was really great to see from afar the progress that you've made. I think the 5-0 really doesn't do a justice of how close this debate was. I think I could, keep spinning the wheel in my head for the rest of the decision, but I think that it was a really close debate. I think you all put a really good fight, so I think you should be very proud of that. Very excited to see what you will do after you graduate this activity, but I'm hoping that you will always be around with us, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this.
I'm not good at talking to people, but every app that you've written this year has been awesome, and it's been so sick to open all the docs and makes me to think about it all the time, and it's a lot of fun. And just I haven't been able to judge you this year, and this 2AR was fantastic, and I just think you're great. Wilkes, I think that what you do is an absolute service to this community. The number of debates that you upload, you record your own, and doing all the extra work to do that is awesome. As someone who spent my entire high school debate career learning solely through just watching YouTube debates, the impact you're gonna have is just for generations of debaters to come. And that's awesome, and you're just such a great debater also, which makes it even better. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really pissed off I didn't get to judge you all more. You all were so good in this debate. And I haven't had a chance to judge you all a lot, but I think it's super clear that you all exemplify everything that is excellent about Kansas debate, which for me is an incredibly high compliment because I think the world of all of you all. You all are smart, you're fast, you had 1 million new apps this year, so retweet everything that you said. It was a real honor getting to judge this debate in particular, and you all in general. Kansas debate is so excellent because you're all pulling for each other, you're all participating in each other's success, which is exemplified by all of the people here to support you, which I think is the highest honor that any debater can have. And so I hope you all are proud of your careers, and I hope you know that you are what's best about debate.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo everything that's been said. You all are such incredible members of the community, and to the point about Kansas debate, I know that there are so many debaters in Kansas and across the country who you inspire in this activity. I know I've been on the other end of some of the apps that you've done before, and they're always very strategic and very challenging, and you took a new approach to the topic, trying to put a case nag together before. It was really tricky. But to everyone's point, just also want to echo that it's not just that you're great debaters, but really great people, which I think is obviously the most important thing. So congrats on all that you've accomplished.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far. I've judged y'all a couple times this year. I've always thought that y'all were really good and that it's really fun to judge y'all. And I think that y'all did extremely well in this debate. And I think that this is the best excellent debate. I think that you have a lot to be proud of and how far you've come in this tournament and how it ended.
Thank you all. John, you see my last message in the Discord? Sorry. You can change that.
I gotta cover it.
You can make this not true.
You'll lose instantly. But
you can make it not true, though.
It is still streaming.
Yeah, I'll be in.